My name is Charlotte, and I'm 26 years old, single, and without a full-time job. Since middle school, I've been somewhat of a recluse. I attended high school briefly but dropped out, so my education stopped at middle school. I've been living with my parents ever since, taking on part-time jobs and occasional online work. I have an older brother named Sawyer, 3 years my senior. He's the complete opposite of me: athletic, popular, and outgoing. Sawyer never brought friends home, keeping our lives separate. Even if we crossed paths at the convenience store, he'd ignore me. I accepted it as someone else's problem and focused on my own routines. Once Sawyer went off to college and moved out, I stopped worrying about his friends and their perceptions. Then talk of his upcoming marriage started circulating as he approached 29. It wasn't unexpected. Eventually, he decided to bring his fiancée home to meet our parents, and since I was there that day, I joined them. "Dad, Mom, I'm home," Sawyer announced punctually. Spotting me with our parents, he looked momentarily perplexed. "Sorry to interrupt." His fiancée entered the house, seemingly oblivious to Sawyer's hesitation. Catching sight of me, she uttered a puzzled, "Ha!" Clearly, she was silently questioning Sawyer about me, whom he likely hadn't mentioned. "Thank you for coming all this way. I'm Sawyer's mother, and this is his father." My mother introduced herself, and my father. The fiancé nodded politely but still appeared puzzled. My father didn't elaborate on my behalf. My parents had always been critical of me for not living up to Sawyer's accomplishments. When we were younger, they used to say, "Your brother can do it. Why can't you?" It felt like part of our upbringing. But as we grew older, things changed. Eventually, I was even labeled a burden on the family finances. It seemed they planned to ignore me at this meeting too. "I'll go get some more drinks," my mother announced, rising. She leaned in close as she passed me, whispering, "Why are you here? Go back to your room." I had attended hoping for some family connection on my terms, but it seemed to have backfired. Yet leaving wasn't an option, so I stayed put. My brother's fiancée introduced herself as Isabella. She was my age, 26, stunningly beautiful and poised, emitting an aura that discouraged casual conversation. Sawyer seemed annoyed. He probably didn't want me there. He introduced her to our parents but ignored me completely. It was like I didn't exist. After the marriage discussion ended, casual chatter ensued, but my brother continued to act as if I weren't present. Then Sawyer asked, "So, Charlotte, what do you do these days?" Before I could respond, he cut in, "Never mind, Isabella, you don't need to talk to her." Isabella looked visibly surprised. "It's okay, you don't have to worry," my mother interjected. "Yeah, don't bother. She's just a distant relative," my father added, sealing something inside me. A distant relative, I echoed silently, realizing reconciliation was futile from the start. The meeting ended as if my presence had made no difference at all. Soon after, my brother and Isabella married and began building their new home together. Sawyer, having graduated from college and working at a prestigious company, was still in his 20s but earning well. Isabella had already resigned from her job to become a homemaker. As their house neared completion, we received an invitation to their housewarming party. The event was to be intimate, with Isabella's relatives and my brother's colleagues in attendance. My mother fretted, "Oh, it's finished already. Time flies. We need to prepare a nice housewarming gift." My father brushed it off, saying, "We're family, something simple will do." As he glanced at the invitation, only my parents' names were listed. Mine was conspicuously absent. My mother seemed to notice but asked tentatively, "Charlotte is coming too, right?" I wasn't sure what to make of it. After the way they introduced me last time, I did feel inclined to attend. "It's okay if I'm not invited," I offered, but my mother insisted, "No, you're coming. I'll take care of everything." Reluctantly, I agreed to go. On the day of the party, it started raining suddenly. My parents and I took a taxi to my brother's house. Due to the rain, Sawyer and Isabella stayed indoors to greet guests at the entrance. As we arrived, my mother turned to me abruptly and said, "You'll cover the taxi fare," before rushing out with my father, leaving me to pay. Realizing the distance wasn't significant enough to warrant a taxi, I begrudgingly paid the fare and hurried towards the entrance, now soaked from the rain. "Who are you?" Isabella's question caught me off guard. We had only met once before. Perhaps she had forgotten. I introduced myself tentatively. "I'm Charlotte, Sawyer's sister." Her response was chillingly casual, accompanied by a smile. "Ah, the high school dropout. We didn't invite the freeloader living off a parent." Just then, Sawyer returned from inviting another guest inside. He looked at me with disdain, questioning, "Why are you here?" Isabella joined in, her tone changing now that she knew who I was. "Hey Sawyer, I told you not to invite her. Why is she here?" "I don't get it," she remarked, aligning with him. "She's actually worse," my brother added dismissively. "It would have been better if my brother and parents had simply not invited me." Cautiously, I asked my brother, "Am I really such a stranger because I didn't finish high school? Does that mean I have no education at all?" Isabella echoed his sentiments, her demeanor unsettlingly calm throughout. "Understood," I said curtly, turning to leave, only to find that the taxi had left. We were not on a main road, making it challenging to hail another. With no umbrella, I trudged away in the rain, the sound of Isabella's laughter lingering behind me. Eventually, I made it home. My parents returned looking content, but their mood changed when they saw my soaked appearance. "Why did you leave abruptly? Couldn't you even arrange for a taxi home?" "You're so useless," my mother complained as though it were to be expected. "Sorry, I suddenly had a stomach ache," I lied, trying to cover up my abrupt departure. "You left just because of that. You're hopeless. Make sure to send the gift later. You're an adult," my father admonished me. I had brought a gift to the party but returned home without giving it. I thought about mailing it, but I didn't have their address. I could have asked my parents, but the atmosphere was tense, I explained. Instead, I decided to reach out to my brother directly. "I want to send a gift. Can you tell me the address?" I messaged him. His response was blunt and hurtful. "I don't give my address to strangers, right?" I sighed deeply. It was disheartening to realize that the dominance and disregard I felt extended beyond public embarrassment. Is it really entertaining to assert dominance over me privately, not just humiliate me in front of others? I wondered aloud. The thought that both my brother and Isabella might be sharing these sentiments, possibly even laughing about it together, was deeply unsettling. Either way, it was all incredibly absurd. After giving up on sending a congratulatory gift to my brother and his wife for their housewarming party, I made a decision. I couldn't continue living under the same roof with my family. Despite not having a full-time job, I had saved enough from my part-time work to rent a room and live independently. With spare time on my hands, I ventured into streaming videos, a hobby I enjoyed. Utilizing my knack for identifying trends and boosting viewership, I quickly began earning tens of thousands each month. This income comfortably covered my living expenses, and the surplus allowed me to explore investments, which turned out to be successful. Buoyed by my financial gains, I ventured into running a small import-export business. Life became busy, but in a fulfilling way, absent of family members who used to criticize my screen time. Several months later, my parents, who hadn't contacted me since I left, called unexpectedly. "We need your help with Sawyer's financial situation," they said. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious about what had befallen my brother, who had recently built a new home. My parents hesitated before explaining that Sawyer had been hosting frequent parties at his new house, networking with various individuals including bosses, executives, clients, and Isabella's acquaintances. During one of these gatherings, someone pitched a lucrative investment opportunity, and Sawyer, enticed by promises of quick returns, invested a substantial sum. I was dumbfounded. My brother had a stable job, so it seemed unnecessary for him to take such a risk. Who recommended this investment? Could it be a scam? I asked, hoping for reassurance. "No, it's not. It was one of Isabella's acquaintances," my parents replied, placing their full trust in her. "How much do you need?" I inquired, shocked by the amount they mentioned, a sum far beyond what an ordinary employee could easily spare. "Is that really the amount my brother alone needs?" I asked tentatively, already dreading the answer. We were also approached with the same opportunity, my parents admitted reluctantly. "I can't come up with that much money so easily." "I'm sorry," I began to end the call, but they pleaded, "We're your family. Help us out in this time of need." "Family? It's a little late for that. I'm busy, and I'm a stranger to you now, right?" With that, I hung up the phone. Later, they somehow found out where I worked and showed up unannounced at my office. I was in the midst of a crucial business meeting when my secretary interrupted. "There are guests here for you, President." "I don't have any other appointments." "Who are they?" I asked, perplexed. "They claim to be your family, ma'am," my secretary replied. "What?" I felt a shiver of apprehension. Apologizing to my business partner, I excused myself and hurried to the reception area. There stood my pregnant sister-in-law, Isabella, my brother Sawyer, and my parents. "You're running the company, huh?" "Well, it's much smaller than where I work," my brother remarked with a smirk, glancing around my office. "Excuse me, who are you?" I asked coldly, pretending not to recognize them. "What's with the attitude?" my brother snapped, his temper flaring. My mother stepped in, trying to smooth things over. "We've discussed this before. We need your support. You're successful now, so surely you can help us out," she said shamelessly, as if it were perfectly reasonable to ask for money. "It's a crucial time for our family. Isabella is pregnant, and the baby's health is a concern. We need to see a specialist," my father and Isabella chimed in, adding to the pressure as if it were my obligation to solve everyone's financial problems. Employees passing by the reception area glanced over with concern. Wanting to defuse the situation quickly, I said firmly, "Please leave. You're causing a disturbance." My brother exploded in anger again. "What? We're causing a disturbance? We came all this way, and this is how you treat your family?" His outburst drew the attention of more employees who stopped to observe. "And did you all know she dropped out of middle school? She was a recluse. No wonder she's so rude," he added, seemingly intent on humiliating me into compliance. Unexpectedly, the employees responded with a defense my brother hadn't anticipated. "We know. Everyone here knows the president's background. Many of us come from similar situations. Is there a problem?" Caught off guard by this unexpected support, my brother, who usually socialized only with highly educated and affluent individuals, stumbled over his words. He stammered, unsure how to respond. My father intervened disdainfully. "What a pathetic company. Just a gathering of neats." "That's right. Companies like this can't be any good," my brother loudly proclaimed. Just then, the president of the company I was meeting with emerged from the reception room, having heard the commotion. My brother's face drained of color as he glanced at the approaching man. He immediately lowered his gaze. "What's going on here, Sawyer?" Isabella asked, unaware of the trouble. "Shh, don't use my name," my brother hissed urgently to Isabella, but it was too late. Sawyer Long, the division manager. The company president recognized him. "We owe a lot to your company." It turned out that his company was also a client of my brother's company. Sweat began to bead on my brother's forehead. I must not have made much of an impression, considering we're not a big company." The president skillfully turned my brother's words against him. Caught off guard, my brother faltered and froze. Sensing trouble, my parents and Isabella fell silent, realizing the severity of the situation. I apologized to the president once more, ignoring my family. "I'm sorry for the disturbance. I'll ask them to leave." "Oh, are you sure?" the president replied. "I have time today. Don't worry about me. Take your time with your family." "No, they're not my family," I asserted, glancing pointedly at my parents' and brother's family. "They're complete strangers." Following that, my parents' and brother's family were escorted out of the company premises. Perhaps stunned by the encounter with the company president, they left quietly. Curious about how my workplace had been exposed, I investigated and discovered that Isabella was responsible. She had a friend who was well informed about investments and always kept an ear to the ground. This friend came across news about a young woman in her 20s gaining recognition as a skilled trader and company owner. Isabella recognized this woman from a photo in the media and realized it was her husband's sister, whom she had heard described as a middle school dropout and recluse. Isabella then informed my brother and parents, suggesting they approach me for financial assistance. Despite their attempts to contact me by phone, which I had ignored due to my busy schedule, they eventually resorted to showing up at my company. Given how they had treated me like a stranger, I decided to keep my distance from them moving forward. However, my curiosity about Isabella remained, prompting me to look into her further. Following the incident at my company, I became curious about the friend involved in my family's financial troubles, who turned out to be Isabella's ex-boyfriend. It appeared they were still entangled, and shocking revelations unfolded. Isabella's unborn child wasn't my brother's but belonged to that investor. My brother was devastated by the deception and lies that had unraveled. Furthermore, it emerged that Isabella, under her ex-boyfriend's guidance, had been exploiting several other men for money. This led to their divorce, and both Isabella and her ex-boyfriend ended up in police custody, though recovering the lost money seemed unlikely. As a result of these revelations, my brother's career took a downward spiral. Despite being in his 20s, he was demoted to a less prestigious department and eventually resigned. Similarly, my father faced consequences. His temper led to a public outburst with a subcontractor, which, upon an investigation into his conduct, resulted in his termination. It was revealed that he had expressed discriminatory views toward those without high academic qualifications, echoing the belittling comments he used to direct at me. Both my brother and father lost their jobs and their financial situation deteriorated. Despite their reduced income, they continued to reach out, suggesting we live together again. However, I had already barred them from entering my company's premises, preventing any forced encounters. Through all these challenges, they persistently asked, "Aren't we still family?" Yet my response remained unwavering. "I don't know you. You're strangers to me now, and I have no intention of changing that."